Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Simply Human, our YouTube channel and podcast. This week, we were actually not going to be posting an episode because of the holiday. It's a 4th of July holiday and also Karen's 60th birthday week. But we decided that I talked to Karen and we got a question from one of our viewers. And I thought I would just go ahead and do a quick hit episode to address that question because it's more about pulling everything together that we've been talking about. Oh, excuse me, I've got a bug flying. So, what we're going to do today is respond to the question of what do you do when someone doesn't take no for an answer? And this is a great question. So, thank you for sending that in. I hear this quite a bit when people are first starting to learn how to do boundaries. And I'll be honest, when I was first starting to learn how to do boundaries, it almost took everything that I had to get that first effort to assert that boundary. And all someone had to do was slightly push on it and resist. And I just collapsed because I thought, wait a minute, I did the steps. Shouldn't I be rewarded by the person than just automatically respecting my boundary? And guess what, folks? That's not what happens because everybody has their own agenda and they're going to be pushing their agenda. So ultimately, this question of what do we do when a person doesn't take no for an answer? Because we've been working on getting more comfortable saying no and harnessing your values and wanting to tell the truth, but yet the person won't take no for an answer. This is actually a boundary issue. You want to look at the big picture. So it comes in many different forms, but it's basically what do we do when somebody is testing our boundaries? So it could be your teenagers, it could be your spouse, it could be a coworker, or a friend, or even a salesperson. Like that's a place where you might encounter this a lot. You say, no, I don't want a perfume sample. And they just come at you with that perfume and spray you anyway. So let's talk about how to bring all the components that we've talked about to date together and how you can use them to deal with these situations when someone isn't taking no for an answer. And I'm going to put the relevant episodes from our podcast in the notes. So if you're new to the show, you can go back, take a look at each of those episodes and go a little bit more in depth than I'm going to go into today on what these steps are all about. Before we go any further, don't forget if you could hit subscribe, hit like, and think about if anybody you know is struggling with this same question, please go ahead and forward and share it because the more people we can get subscribe, then the more people the algorithm will send this out to. We are really setting a goal of building enough of an audience to do more of a live stream so that we can answer your questions in real time. Now let's move on. What do you do when somebody just doesn't take no for an answer? Let's talk about all the different components. And what this starts with is remembering what boundaries are all about and all three parts of the boundary stool. So if you're on YouTube, I'm going to go ahead and bring up the slide again. That's the three components of boundaries. And if you're listening on a podcast, I'm just going to go ahead and read this to you. So the three parts or the three legs of the boundary stool are first, and let's do in the context of someone not accepting your no. So the first part is knowing that your no is really a no. Because if you're ambivalent, which means, well, kind of no, but maybe yes, I'm feeling pulled in two different directions. If that's the case, or you're a little wishy-washy, I'm going to address that at the end. But right now, we're talking about when you're very clear, you know that your no is a no. So that's the first leg of the stool, knowing what's okay, what's not okay, what you want, what you don't want from the environment. The second leg of the stool is make sure that you are clear on what is 100% in your control, and that right now, if you're saying no, what is 100% in your control is not doing the thing, right? Unless you've got a gun to your head, think about it. Did you ever try to get a teenager to do something, but you don't really have control over whether they do it or not? So there's a lot of power there in knowing that you have the control to not do the thing that you're saying no to. For example, say friends are saying, "Oh, come on, just have one more beer, just have another drink." And you don't want to, you know that that's not what you wanted to. Is that 100% in your control on whether you have another drink or not? Yes. You are 100% in control of not doing the thing. The third leg of the stool is making sure you're identifying the actions you're willing to take, either to create consequences or to act on your intention. When we're dealing with somebody who doesn't take no for an answer, we're primarily dealing with leg 2 and leg 3. So as we go through the rest of these components, I'm going to try to call out when we're talking about leg 2 and when we're talking about leg 3. Don't forget, I have this sort of slideshow on my website, ChristinaCaroPhD.com. And if you need to, go there, pull up this slide, type them out for yourself, put on a post-it on your mirror, because you really want to commit these 3 components to memory. Because anytime you're in one of these situations and you're saying no and you're feeling that pushback and it's starting to feel uncertain, what you want to do is quickly go through, okay, I know that I don't want to do this. What's in my control? Oh, gee, I don't have a gun to my head. And what action can I take? So when you're able to run through those really quickly, you can get back on track. So let me just put that aside for now. So we've gone over these 3 parts. So the next thing, be clear about your values. So hopefully one of your values is honesty. And even when it's hard or you're worrying about disappointing someone, decide to choose to sit with that discomfort that the person might be disappointed and choose to be truthful rather than giving up and sort of giving them like, okay, I guess if you really want to. But then what happens? Later, you're going to feel resentment. And over time, those resentments build up. And then it could show up in acting out in different ways and ultimately can cause problems down the road in existing relationships. If you're also dealing with someone you don't know, it's like the person at the department store, then being truthful should be even easier because there's less at stake about hurting the person's feelings. Although I know there are people who even worry with strangers about hurting their feelings, and they will actually self-betray in some ways by giving in or complying or giving up on their boundaries because of some perceived, like, I'm going to hurt that person's feelings. So you have to be really clear that the value of telling the truth is more important to you. And it may be in common. And you need to sit with, how do I feel about telling the truth and say being kind? Because that might feel it's in conflict. And I'm going to address that a little bit in a couple of minutes here, that there is a way for you to find a resolution to that. But right now, get clear on your values and then commit to being someone you trust. So that means consistently respecting and honoring your truth over pleasing someone. This is really where we start getting to cultivating self-trust. Because if you know that first leg of the stool, like, my no is a no, I don't want to do this thing. I don't want to try that restaurant. I don't want to go to that movie. I don't want to, have chit chat with the in-laws who, annoy me. Whatever it is, I don't want to go to that big crowded party, or I don't want to go on that solo trip. I need to stay connected to my friends. Whatever it is that's important to you, you have to commit to being your own advocate, to showing up for yourself. Because I need you to understand this. If you have a history of putting your own needs and preferences aside because of fear of hurting someone else's feelings or someone getting mad, what registers in your psyche is a betrayal, but it is self-betrayal. And over time, there's a part of you that will start to recognize you as being untrustworthy to yourself. And when self-trust is damaged, every time you self-betray, over time, that can lead to increased anxiety and also depression. So self-trust will grow and flourish when we consistently act in a self-respecting and self-honoring way. So I believe we have a whole episode just on self-trust. The next step is how to deal with someone who's being persistent is adopt curiosity as the frame instead of fear or suspiciousness. There might be fear that comes out of the dread of, oh, I'm put in a position where I have to hurt someone's feelings. So there might be fear. Or there might be fear of, oh, I'm feeling bullied. I'm feeling steamrolled. You can sort of feel that resolve slipping away and there's fear. Or it might be someone's pushing their agenda and there's a why is this person doing this? Like, why is this so hard? A suspicious frame would be that the person has malintent, and that is going to increase your anxiety. And this is particularly important not to adopt a frame of suspicion if the person who's pushing on your boundaries is someone you care about. It's someone you want to retain a relationship with. If it's a car salesman, yeah, you should be suspicious. But this particular aspect is if it's somebody that you're close to, is try to have a check on, looking at it as that person is bullying me or bulldozing me. Even if they are, okay, this is about maintaining relationships. You're going to do a lot better if you're like, you know what? I'm just going to be curious about this annoying behavior and kind of see what this is all about. So curiosity is really going to be your friend here. So some ways this could sound is, wow, this person's really committed to their agenda. Huh, look at that. Sort of think about your own times when you had an agenda where you was committed. Like you could go down a whole thought process that helps you to detach from the experience of the moment by being curious about, wow, this person's really committed to their agenda. That person is zealously advocating for their way. Good for them. Because in some ways, if you can even look at it as like, yeah, that's a part of myself I haven't developed. Like I don't tend to really advocate for myself. Like I'm going to have, assume a positive intention, even if poorly executed frame. That's something I think we talked in one of the first or second episodes. Or another way to look at it is like, aw, look at that person going through all those shenanigans to get their way. Like this might be your teenager, this might be your spouse, but having more of an amused kind of attitude when you see someone just really trying to push their way. And how do you get there? You get there when you've learned to trust that you know how to identify that second leg, what's 100% in my control. Once you recognize that your boundaries, what's in your control, and you own that, sort of a lot of the stress and the anxiety will start to melt away, and you can more easily adopt these attitudes of curiosity or humor or even admiration for someone who's really zealous instead of going straight to fear or suspicion or annoyance. So adopt curiosity as a frame instead of fear. Next step, meet the person's zealous effort with compassion because you already decided that your no is a no, and you can appreciate that they are super hopeful that they're going to get their way and they're going to be able to persuade you, and that ultimately they're going to have to contend with their own disappointment because you're really solid and certain and sure that you're just not interested and you're not going to be persuaded. And so that person's going to suffer a little bit ultimately. And you can meet that with, like, yeah, I know you really wanted me to go watch you play golf, but it's 90 degrees out and that's just not something I'm going to do. So you know that your partner's going to be disappointed. They just really wanted you to ride around on the golf cart, and you're just like, no, no, hun, like it's not going to happen. Yeah, they're going to be disappointed. And instead of annoyance, you can meet it with like, hey, babe, I know you're really disappointed. I'm really sorry. Maybe we can come up with something that we can hang out together next time. Because when you're not in the fight flight mode, remember your prefrontal cortex and your thinking brain can work better, and you can do things like creative problem solving. So you meet that zealous effort with compassion. And this is, again, knowing that legs 2 and 3, it's in my control. I don't have to do this. And 3, I am willing to take that action. So when you have that there, you can meet this moment with more compassion. Validate and acknowledge their strong desire to have their way and meet it with empathy. Yeah, I know that was really important to you, but it's just, yeah, it's going to be hard. And I know you're disappointed. And, I'm really sorry about that. And let's talk about alternatives. Again, it's really in the tone of not meeting it with fear or bracing. Like usually if you don't have the self-trust that you're not going to self-betray, it shows up in your tone as defensiveness because you're bracing to have to meet that bullying or that bulldozing with, I'm going to have to double down on my boundaries. It's like, no, you just have to be with, it's a no, what's in your control, and you're willing to take action on it. It's not any greater than if somebody wasn't pushing. That's the whole thing. It's deciding that I'm going to be consistent. The other thing that can be really helpful is offer to help them brainstorm other solutions that don't involve you. I'm not down for sitting, in 18, holes of golf in 90-degree weather, but hey, are you just wanting some company? Why don't you call so and so and so and so and so? Is there anybody else you can do it? Or if it's really about they wanted to spend time with you, you could say, hey, what's this really about? If it's time with me, why don't we brainstorm something that we would both enjoy doing? What would be the alternative? Really work with that person. They're having a need, and that's why they're pursuing it so zealously. So if you focus on the need instead of the persistent behavior that can be annoying, but try to focus in on what is the need they are just enthusiastically trying to get met, and then problem solve and brainstorm around the need in a creative way, you can find another solution. Now, if the person persists beyond reason, so you've gone through these steps. This is actually A, B, C, D, and E, and I'm going to put them in the show notes. But the person is just, they're kind of fixated, or some of these don't apply because it's a stranger or it's a salesperson. What you're going to do, say if it's a salesperson, something like that, you're really just going to stop at being clear, being committed to your no. And it's mostly taking that action of saying, listen, this seems to be disappointing you, that I'm not interested in buying this item. Don't know how to help you with that, but I've got other things I'm going to do. Have a great day. My third leg action is I'm willing to walk away when I feel like I need to walk away. I am not waiting for permission. This is something that I see happen when it's with strangers and when it's with salespeople. There's sort of this feeling, and again, with my Asperger's, I'm oblivious to these protocols, but there's this feeling trapped into a social norm protocol. This salesperson is being persistent and annoying me, but I really, don't want to be talking to them, but I have to kind of wait until they give this implicit permission for me to leave. I'm sorry. I don't know why y'all have that in your brain. That makes no sense to me, and it doesn't have to be there. I'll give you a quick example. I was trying to buy a phone, and this is back in the day. This is was like it wasn't a cell phone. It was like an old-fashioned plug-in-the-wall phone. And the salesperson, they get some sort of credit for selling you extended warranties. And she was very, very pushy about trying to get me to buy this extended warranty. I was curious. Well, why are you so concerned about my buying an extended warranty? Should I expect this phone to break really soon? And then she's like, oh, well, sometimes the buttons can break and blah. She started going with that. And I said, oh, is AT&T, I think it was an AT&T phone. I said, is AT&T aware that you are promoting their products as being pieces of crap that are going to break so soon that I have to have this extended warranty? You know what? Maybe I should give AT&T a call and let them know about apparently they have defective products. Shall I do that? The the girl got headed just deer in headlights and started stammering and she wasn't sure what to do. And I was like, how about I just don't buy that warranty? 'Cause I knew I wasn't going to. I knew that they get a sales commissions for doing it. And I couldn't believe that she was bashing the product. I'm like, I'm not even sure I want to buy this product anymore. You've just told me it's going to break before 6 months. So now tell me, why should I buy this product? So that's being curious and observing what the person is saying and actually responding to what they're saying, not to your emotional reaction to the pressure. It just, it's actually fun. I really enjoy these moments. And that's what I call, if the person persists, I switch from the content, which is her telling me why it's important to buy a warranty, into the process. And the process was, wow, do you know that you're actually saying that this is a piece of crap that you're trying to sell me? Does why would I buy this now? Now I'm completely changed the track, and it gets people off of the content that they're trying to pressure you with. So switching from content to process. I think we're going to have to do a whole episode on that because we haven't done that yet. And it's an art and it takes some time to learn and to understand, to execute. But this is the second leg. What's in my control? And that is whether I'm going to get hooked into the content or whether I'm going to change and use my power to say, hey, what is this really about? And I'm going to switch to the process. The process might be, I told you I didn't want to do this twice already. And you seem to be ignoring that. And you just keep pushing your agenda. See how I'm describing the behavior that's actually happening? I'm not talking about what the actual issue is. I'm describing the person's behavior. And so I'm saying, wow, I'm really noticing. So this is advocacy with inquiry. This is what we went over in our conflict episode. I'm noticing that you're disregarding what I've told you about how I feel about this, and you keep persisting regardless of what I'm telling you. And I'm feeling disrespected. And then the inquiry, is that your intention? So, is that your intention for me to feel disrespected? By switching from the content of their persistence to how they are pursuing that and the impact it's having on you, you've changed from content to process. And now you've taken back control of the conversation because they're unlikely to say, yes, I'm wanting you to feel disrespected right now. Okay, so this is a really powerful tool. Another version of this is, if you can't respect my no, I'm going to have to end this conversation now. And that'd be like a salesperson or some person calling you and trying to get money out of you. Hey, if you can't listen, I'm going to hang up right now, or I'm going to walk away now because you clearly can't respect that. I'm switching not from the specifics and details of the request or whatever the agenda is. I'm focusing on the behavior. That's what I'm calling the process. If it's family members, this is from Love and Logic Parenting. You say, listen, I noticed that you are not responding. I gave you an answer. I can see you're not happy with it, but I love you too much to argue. So I'm just going to end this now. I love you too much to argue. That comes from Love and Logic Parenting. Works really well. It's something you can use with teenagers who are being persistent. I want to take the car. I want to go see my friends. Listen, I love you too much to argue. Done with this. Love you too much to argue. So you just say that in a broken record. Now, let's sort of jump to when you are feeling ambivalent, or you are, you're uncertain, or you're a little bit wishy-washy. The first thing you have to do is be honest with yourself that you're not really certain whether it's a yes or a no, because the person's persuasion may work on you, or you don't have a strong enough no, and the value around not disappointing people is more powerful in that moment. So you say, well, okay, you capitulate, you give in, you're like, okay, fine, we'll watch that movie. In this moment, if you allow yourself to be persuaded, it's really important that you just own that decision. And this is about mitigating the development of resentment. So if you regret it later, have compassion for yourself, because you can recognize in retrospect that you weren't clear in the beginning, and you gave the best answer you could, and maybe you lean towards the not disappointing someone in value instead of the tell the truth value, because you weren't clear. That was the truth. But now you're like, oh, this was such a bad idea. I shouldn't have done this. It's really important to just own that you made the best decision you could with the information that you had at the time. Again, we talked about this in past episodes. And if you own that decision, say, you know what? Okay, what you can do is, I'm going to learn from this experience. And it's like, I'm not going to be resentful for the person. This is my decision. I made the decision. So you can trust that next time you've now built up your experience base. And when this happens again, now maybe you have more information that'll help you have a much more clear no, rather than being in that uncertain mode. One of the key practices is, if you've noticed through this, is there is this need to cultivate the observing self, or another word is a meta awareness. So awareness of your awareness. Like, I'm feeling upset, and then there's a part of you that is observing that you're feeling upset. It's really important to cultivate this observing self, because it's the part that is detached from the emotions of the moment. It's the part that's going, wow, you're getting really annoyed right now. Oh, wow, he's really bugging you. There's a part that's being bugged, and then there's the parts that's aware that you're being bugged. And it's that observing self that is able to do all of these steps that I outlined. The one that's getting annoyed in the moment, the part of you that's already hooked emotionally, that's going to be a lot harder. And it's really the moment that you can have that awareness. I'm getting so annoyed. Who's observing that? It's the observing self is noticing, I'm getting so annoyed. And you want to see if you can shift your awareness to the observing self. And then from there say, okay, wait, am I clear on my no? And you can run through the three legs. Am I clear on my no? What's in my control here? Am I honoring my own truth? Am I honoring my own preference? Okay, can I understand this person is just being persistent because they're super hopeful, and hey, they're a human being with an agenda, and good for them. And now why don't I problem solve with them and offer empathy and say, hey, I know you're probably disappointed, but why don't we use this time instead to talk about how you can get that need met in a different way, but that's not going to involve me, so that we're both happy with the resolution of this. In order to develop that meta awareness, or that observing self, really the best practice that I know of is finding some sort of mindfulness practice. There are many different apps out there. I will put a link to some resources, and mindfulness meditation is the best path that I know. And most people like, oh, I don't want to do sitting on a pillow for 30 minutes contemplating my navel. That sounds horrible. So what they found in the research is, really, if you even just do 5 minutes several times throughout the day and just integrate it into your daily life. And there are many places you could work to sort of observe. Like, you could do mindful driving. I'm going to really pay attention to driving home, especially a route you do every time. You've probably gotten into autopilot, and just say, let me observe, and then notice the thoughts that want to intrude and go, oh, I'm thinking. When you say thinking, that's the observing self noticing your mind is drifting, identifying it, and then coming back to your present awareness. Maybe it's mindful eating, where you really take 5 minutes to taste what you're eating. And every time your mind wants to get distracted and you're like, oh, I'm thinking, that's you being in the observing self. Every time you notice that, you are observing. You could go out and be gardening and listen to the birds and do mindful gardening, where you're going to do hearing, like, oh, I hear the birds. And then your mind drifts to whatever happened at work and you're like, no, let me listen. Oh, I'm fixating on work instead of relaxing and gardening. Bring my attention back to listening to the birds. So there's several different ways to do this, and I'll find a link. There's a lot on YouTube that you can do, but let me find some that I like, and I will put it into the episode notes. This was a lot, and I know it's a quick hit. It's only 30 minutes. So hopefully you'll be able to go through these steps and start using all of these things we've been talking about to help you deal more effectively and with grace when people inevitably push on your boundaries. With that, I'm going to say, if you like this episode, give us a thumbs up, put a comment in, share your own story. And otherwise, Karen will be back next week, and we will see you next Saturday. Have a great day, everybody.